1 minute ago, Diddy broke down in tears after Janet Jackson's accusation. No denial on day 31 of the federal trial investigating Sean Diddy. Combs a gray envelope with no return address was submitted under seal. No media advisory, no legal representation. Only the initials JJ handwritten on the tab. Inside a 5-page sworn statement by Janet Jackson accompanied by one attached exhibit. No legal countersign, no request for cross-examination. The court classified it as a voluntary submission connected to a pattern of alleged misconduct under federal review ranging from coercion to abuse of influence and exploitative recruitment practices in the entertainment industry. The statement opened without a title. The first line read, "My brother tried to warn me, but I didn't understand what he meant." According to Jackson, the events began in the summer of 1998. She had spent several days at Neverland with Michael Jackson. Upon leaving, she discovered a handwritten note in her luggage. No envelope. No signature. It read, "Not every invitation is for you. Some parties aren't about music. Don't let them dress it up like it is. There are mentors who don't teach. There are circles you don't come back from." She dismissed it then. Years later, she received a vague invitation through a choreographer loosely affiliated with Diddy. He contacted her assistant with an offer, an exclusive off-record gathering in Malibu on September 5th. Not just music, he said. Legacy makers. Suspicious Janet requested details. The next day, a black envelope appeared under her driver's windshield wiper. No return address. No RSVP instructions. Inside, a white linen card bearing her full name. Below, "Welcome to the Circle. Malibu, September 5th, dress code black. Attendance is legacy." She sensed something was wrong and called Michael. He didn't answer. His assistant returned the call an hour later. He said she shouldn't go. Not Janet. Janet told no one. But the signals multiplied. A former backstage contact called, "Did you get a black envelope?" The woman warned. "They're scouting more girls, watching your showcases, asking about your dancers." According to Janet, a list began circulating. Informal, no agency logos, first names, dance styles, ages. Some had stars next to them. 3 were trainees from her own choreographers. Janet didn't respond. She didn't confirm or deny. Instead, she canceled her fall youth programs and mentoring plans, told her team she needed rest. But silence didn't shield her. Within a week, her TRL appearance was canceled with no notice. Brands suspended her partnerships. Her young dancers were approached. One offered a tour, one invited to a creative retreat, and one, barely 18, signed with a new unfamiliar management team and went silent. Janet tried to reach out. One mother returned her call. "She's fine, just in a different zone now." Janet understood. "It's not fame, it's disconnection," she said. Right before Michael's death, he called her. His voice was tired but urgent. He asked how she felt about the new crowd in the industry. She didn't follow. He clarified the ones who want to be in the room but never bring any music. Shortly after Cassie's case went public, Janet received another envelope, this time cream-colored. No stamp, not mailed. Left at her gate in Encino. Inside, a single sheet of thick paper. Typed in courier font. "You never built the stairs, but you stopped others from climbing them." On the back, a list of 12 names. First initials, last names. 2 stood out, one marked in red, one underlined. Hers was not on the list, but next to it in pencil, she blocked the door. It wasn't a threat, Janet wrote. It was a receipt. A confirmation. She closed the statement with, "I never said yes." But they didn't need me to agree. They needed me to appear. When I appear, hundreds believe it's safe to follow. I didn't agree. And now I speak clearly. They don't want my voice. They want my reach. According to internal sources, Janet's statement is the first submitted by a high-profile artist not under subpoena, not facing litigation, not paid. Voluntary, uncoerced, and direct. The dossier marks the beginning of a paper trail that could expose an entire system of silence and influence. Federal investigators began identifying what they now refer to as the Circle, a loosely defined but tightly controlled network embedded in the entertainment industry allegedly orchestrated by high-level executives and long-standing power brokers. The Circle operated on silence, reputation, and selective recruitment. Internal FBI files include testimonies from former assistants, event staff, artists, liaisons, and scouts. Their statements reference a sequence of invitation-only gatherings from 1998 to 2022. These gatherings, often disguised as creative retreats, legacy roundtables, or VIP think tanks, followed a recurring structure. Invitations were verbal or handwritten, never digital. Locations were private estates, yachts, or overseas villas. Attendees were a mix of established figures and young, unrepresented talent. No media, no formal agenda, no documentation. 7 of these events have been directly tied to Sean Combs and close collaborators. Locations included Calabasas, Miami, the Bahamas, and Provence. In several cases, local staff were required to sign non-disclosure agreements, and all communication was routed through third-party proxies. Handlers were sometimes flown in from outside the country. Transportation and lodging were prepaid in cash. Attendees were told the events were confidential and off-industry grid. Former choreographers reported receiving vague requests from unnamed coordinators, any strong new girls disciplined, coachable, not too visible yet. Several were offered flight stipends or endorsement deals in exchange for referrals. One recalled being handed an envelope with cash after declining. One was told, "Your name opens doors. We just need her in the room." One assistant stated they never asked if she was ready for the spotlight, only if she was loyal, eager, and close to someone they already trusted. Cross-referencing Janet Jackson's affidavit agents confirmed at least 4 overlapping names with prior witness submissions. 3 of those women attended Malibu or Calabasas events within months of being associated with Jackson's mentorship programs. None of the events were documented in their resumes or agency records. The circle's structure as mapped by investigators appears to involve at least 3 tiers. Name 1. Mentors, recognized artists or cultural icons with credibility. 2. Scouts, intermediaries with access to fresh talent and minor influence. 3. Targets young women, often dancers or models typically under 25. Mentors were often unaware of their indirect involvement, but their names, connections, and endorsement programs were repeatedly used to legitimize the invitations. In more than a dozen cases, young women described attending opportunities recommended by celebrities only to discover those celebrities had no knowledge of the event. In one notable case, a mentorship campaign was announced via a media agency tied to Combs. 5 finalists were selected. Within 3 months, 4 were quietly signed to a boutique label owned by one of Combs's affiliates. The 5th was never located again in professional circles. Her last known Instagram post was a quote, "Not all doors lead out." A subpoenaed group chat log titled Attendees 59 Malibu showed a structured roster. Each name had status codes confirmed pending escort coach secured. Janet's name did not appear, but 3 of her former protégés did. Emails obtained from an ex-staff member detailed communications with phrases like exposure package, circle access tier 2, legacy integration, not press-facing. One line read, "Add the Jackson trainee." Her look fits the list. Investigators now believe that appearances of inclusion masked a deliberate system of grooming and access control. The circle didn't promise success. It promised relevance contingent on silence. Testimony from a stylist described seeing young artists return from these events more reserved, less available, like they'd been through something but wouldn't talk. She added, "They never looked afraid, just disconnected." In multiple follow-ups, women who had been invited later declined to speak. Some changed numbers, some disappeared from public records. A few continued working under new management firms with unknown ownership. In at least 2 cases, families reported sudden career shifts and complete breaks from past mentors. One dancer, age 19, broke off all contact with her original mentor after accepting an invitation. Her last message, according to that mentor, "This is bigger than both of us. I'm safe." Another 17 at the time was reportedly seen boarding a private flight to an offshore retreat. Her mother attempted to file a missing person report but was told her daughter had signed a legal consent agreement. Prosecutors emphasize that while criminal acts are under investigation, what stands out most is the infrastructure itself, how talent programs, industry access, and celebrity proximity were used as tools of selection. The circle was not about one man. It was about a mechanism, a layered system where prestige opened doors and trust ensured silence. Silence wasn't demanded, it was engineered. What investigators call the mechanism is not one organization, company, or contract. It's a culture built on implicit loyalty, unwritten rules, and reputational dependency. At its core, silence, consent by omission, and the protection of those with reach. Internal reports from the Department of Justice indicate that once individuals entered the circle, their silence was maintained not by coercion, but by consequence. Saying nothing preserved access. Speaking out, even ambiguously, triggered disconnection. Those who spoke up lost endorsements, booking opportunities, media visibility, and most commonly, industry advocates. One emerging artist said, "You don't get blacklisted, you just stop getting calls." Another noted, "Suddenly people don't remember your name at check-in." The impact rippled. Several women described patterns that followed their refusals. Talent agents quietly removed them from active promotion. Dance managers redirected resources to more cooperative performers. Former collaborators grew distant without explanation. Documents obtained under subpoena revealed coded language in internal communications. Difficult alignment schedule doesn't match revisit next season. One phrase recurred across multiple firms, not optimal for legacy partnerships. In multiple testimonies, women described having received legal threats that were never formal lawsuits. NDAs with vague consequences, cease and desist letters without follow-up or third-party calls advising them to let it go. The chilling effect extended beyond those directly involved. Mentors like Janet Jackson found their programs and protégés quietly sidelined. One former record label executive stated, "If you don't cooperate, the system doesn't attack you. It just forgets you exist." Michael Jackson's warnings now carry new weight. Not everyone in the room is there for the music, he reportedly told Janet. And some of them see us as keys, not voices. In 2023, following renewed legal pressure and media exposure, a few women chose to break silence publicly. Their testimonies were varied in detail but consistent in tone, misplaced trust, subtle coercion, career repercussions. One woman, a former finalist in a televised talent show, described being flown to a retreat under the impression of artistic mentoring. She was 18. "Everything felt real until we got there," she said. Then it felt like performance was secondary, like we'd already been cast for something else. The entertainment press, once dismissive or silent, has begun re-evaluating. Several outlets reopened archived interview footage where survivors made veiled references to dark phases or off-grid collaborations. A culture of complicity is also under review. Former stylists, security personnel, and PR consultants now face subpoenas to explain what they saw, who gave instructions, and why no one intervened. One insider admitted they were told to focus on logistics, not ethics. Another confessed to shredding unsigned release forms the day after a retreat. Some have started cooperating. Others have disappeared. One former production assistant who provided internal documents was relocated for protection. She claimed in her deposition, "The worst part wasn't what I saw. It was that I was told it was normal." Forensic accountants are now tracing transactions between shell companies and creative firms. Subpoenas have uncovered payments routed through production stipends and consulting fees tied to events with no released footage or outcomes. One paper trail shows a $250,000 transfer labeled Retreat Logistics linked to a private estate owned by an LLC tied to Combs' known affiliates. As of this writing, federal prosecutors have yet to announce formal charges related to trafficking or organized conspiracy. But insiders suggest the narrative is shifting from isolated misconduct to institutional concealment. Investigators are mapping a network of lawyers, advisors, and brand partners who may have sustained the structure knowingly or otherwise. "The silence was not passive," said one DOJ investigator. "It was structured, it was profitable, and it was protected." Meanwhile, the entertainment industry faces growing pressure. Nonprofits, journalists, and advocacy groups are calling for independent oversight over youth talent programs, especially those tied to private sponsors or celebrity foundations. Even as the formal system resists naming names, informal channels, whistleblower platforms, advocacy pages, and cryptid leaks are gaining traction. One former performer posted, "They used my name to lure others. Now I'm using my name to warn them." As the aftermath continues to unfold, the core remains access, silence, and complicity. What began as a sealed envelope in court is now unraveling into an indictment not just of individuals, but of a system that thrived in whispers and contracts protected by glamour and muted by fear. The unraveling of the circle did not begin with arrests or headlines. It started with omissions, missed events, broken NDAs, whispers between assistants. Quiet fractures in the system slowly compounded into visible disruption. By mid-2023, at least 3 entertainment firms had cut ties with agencies named in whistleblower reports. These decisions were not explained publicly, but were preceded by private audits, internal memos, and legal consultations. In one instance, a foundation funding youth scholarships abruptly froze its operations after being linked to a mentorship program cited in 2 affidavits. Former insiders began breaking ranks. A veteran publicist anonymously submitted a 17-page statement describing how reputation management firms were hired not to defend truth, but to strategically forget certain names. Her statement included schedules showing planned online distractions, a celebrity engagement, a release party timed to coincide with survivor disclosures. Meanwhile, legal firms traditionally used for contract negotiation found themselves under federal scrutiny. Emails recovered from one office revealed attorneys coaching clients on how to respond if off-site retreats were ever questioned. Sample responses included phrases like standard industry development and creative sabbaticals. The Department of Justice launched a joint inquiry with the IRS focusing on flows of untaxed funds through art foundations and media grants. Forensic analysts are investigating nearly 80 financial entities believed to act as shields for unregulated entertainment dealings. Preliminary findings show recurring names tied to donor funds, event catering, and silent partnerships. Janet Jackson's influence continued to ripple. Following her affidavit, at least 5 mentors from separate fields modeling choreography, voice coaching, submitted anonymous letters to the court. Though none mentioned the circle by name, each described patterns of pressure, reward, and silence. Media coverage began shifting tone. Instead of asking why victims took years to speak, commentators questioned why so many institutions remained quiet. A former editor admitted on air, "We didn't investigate earlier because we didn't want to lose access." Full stop. Corporate brands previously partnered with Combs and related figures initiated soft withdrawals. Public statements framed the moves as strategic pivots or brand realignment, but internal correspondence suggests reputational damage control was the priority. One beverage company removed campaign footage after receiving a flag complaint from a former performer. The footage showed her in a behind-the-scenes segment at a retreat location now under investigation. As institutional backing began to falter, survivor-led networks expanded. Online forums secured drop boxes, encrypted helplines, platforms once used to coordinate schedules and auditions were repurposed as repositories of testimony. One portal, Studio Voices, saw over 300 submissions within 72 hours. Patterns emerged across testimonies, invitations framed as career milestones, handlers who doubled as monitors social isolation during events, and industry figures who appeared only during introductions, never during actual workshops or performances. What surprised investigators wasn't the existence of abuse, but the sophistication of containment. For every event, there was a protocol for arrival, engagement, silence, and exit. Survivors described identical briefing phrases: "You've earned this, keep it discreet. Your future starts here." Behind the system stood entities once considered untouchable: global brands, elite schools, industry guilds. They weren't all perpetrators, but many acted as bridges unwittingly or not lending legitimacy. The case was no longer about one artist. It was about institutional inertia, how power structures protected themselves even when doing so risked lives and careers. The collapse didn't come from a single source. It was layered legal subpoenas, activist pressure, donor pullouts, media reversals, and above all, testimony. Every name spoken aloud chipped away at the structure. Federal prosecutors are now finalizing recommendations for a multi-tier investigation. Expected charges include obstruction, financial fraud, coercive trafficking, and conspiracy. One official confirmed, "We're not just looking at the invitations anymore. We're looking at the ledger." What remains is a fractured industry scrambling to redefine its image. Trust, once traded freely, is now guarded. Institutions are rewriting codes of conduct. Producers are mandating background checks. But for many survivors, reform is not enough. We don't want better rules, one said. We want to know why the old ones were ignored. For every woman who came forward, dozens did not. Federal investigators estimate over 60 individuals received invitations linked to events now under scrutiny. Yet fewer than 20 provided testimony. Of those, less than half agreed to attach their names. The reasons for silence vary: fear of career retaliation, active NDAs, mental trauma, or simply a desire to move on. One sealed affidavit reads, "Speaking now won't undo what happened, but it might stop someone else from going through it." Legal documents list participants by aliases: performer A, finalist B, dancer 12. Though anonymized, the patterns echo VIP retreats, off-record mentorship, silent departures. A senior DOJ official summarized, "You don't need full names to see the system." The structure speaks for itself. After Janet Jackson's court statement, survivor engagement rose sharply. Multiple witnesses previously unresponsive began cooperating. One said, "She was the first person we respected who didn't disappear. She told the truth, and it opened the floodgates." In January 2024, a widely shared op-ed titled "I Was a Guest, Not a Voice" described a mentorship summit that devolved into control, surveillance, and coercion. It wasn't just the content, it was the timing. There were no auditions, no evaluations, just rooms, handlers, and rules. The piece prompted a new wave of contact. Nonprofit survivor lines tripled in traffic. Submissions to federal portals increased. Several names, including intermediaries previously unidentified, surfaced repeatedly. Their roles ranged from logistics to silent coordination. Among recurring phrases in survivor reports, "They watched who we talked to." "We were told to stay in assigned groups, no phones, only speak when asked." In one account, a 19-year-old dancer described a party where music was background noise. It wasn't about celebration. It was about who watched who. Many former attendees now express guilt for their past silence. A vocal coach cooperating with authorities shared, "I thought if I kept my head down, it would pass. But all that happened is I let more kids walk into the same trap." The DOJ responded with outreach, avoiding subpoenas where possible. Instead, they provided mental health advocates, private counsel, and secure briefings. In March 2024, they launched the Artists and Witness Program, trauma-informed legal protection for witnesses in entertainment-related cases. Still, many remain unwilling. One prominent choreographer told federal agents she couldn't come forward until a top client's endorsement deal concluded. "If I speak, it's not just my reputation, it's payroll too." Another cited safety concerns after an anonymous warning appeared taped to her windshield. Meanwhile, responses from celebrities tied to the disputed events range from vague to deflective. One actor who attended 3 such retreats stated, "If something happened, I wasn't aware." Critics point to such statements as evidence of passive complicity. "They knew enough to stay vague," said one survivor. "That means they knew something." Institutional responses lag behind. Some agencies have begun reevaluating off-grid mentorship models. A union-backed committee is drafting ethical standards for non-broadcast talent events. But many survivors argue real reform requires more than policy. They have to admit, "This was never just a few bad nights," said one woman. "It was a business model built on silence." Testimonies also highlight a troubling use of influence-known celebrities indirectly legitimizing predatory access. "My name was on the flyer," one mentor said, "but I never got a call, never confirmed anything. They just used me as bait." In private chat logs obtained via subpoena, one coordinator told a partner, "We got a Jackson girl." That opens doors. Such references were not isolated. Reputational borrowing was embedded into the recruitment strategy. For many, the reckoning is not about justice, it's about interruption. "I'm not trying to fix it," one ex-dancer said. "I'm trying to slow it down, so maybe one less girl walks into it." Cultural shifts are already taking root. Performers are organizing outside traditional agencies. Informal networks track suspicious events. Whisper networks once used to find auditions are being repurposed to avoid them. Some survivors have built new platforms. Others have quietly exited the industry. One wrote in a final post, "I didn't leave the stage. I left the trap door behind it." As Part 5 closes, the question is no longer who knew, but who stayed silent and why. What follows in Part 6 is the institutional reckoning, the slow road to reform, and the unfinished ledger of accountability. The system that protected abusers for decades is finally cracking. But accountability, survivors say, is only the beginning. In the wake of expanded federal investigations, 3 major talent agencies have suspended recruitment programs. 2 high-profile producers have stepped down from leadership roles. 1 private label dissolved entirely after leaked internal documents revealed patterns of enabling misconduct. 8 corporate partners severed ties with figures under inquiry. 7 foundation grants were revoked. The ripple effects reached film festivals, television casting boards, and brand endorsement deals. A task force of federal prosecutors, financial auditors, and victim advocates is finalizing a multi-tiered case. Charges are expected to range from coercion and wire fraud to trafficking and conspiracy. This isn't just one bad actor, said a DOJ official. It's a network sustained by silence and profit. Parallel investigations are underway in 3 states. In California, where many events occurred, a grand jury has been convened. In New York, financial probes are tracking campaign donations and luxury venue sponsorships tied to mentorship events. In Nevada, law enforcement is reviewing footage from private estates and closed retreats. The entertainment industry, long reliant on informal gatekeeping, is undergoing a forced recalibration. For years, invitations, mentorships, and retreats were the currency of upward mobility. Now they are evidence. Booking agents are vetting partners. PR firms are revising risk policies. Former insiders are being quietly debriefed. Industry unions are drafting new standards. All off-site talent development events must be registered, audited, and filmed. Third-party observers are to be included in all youth mentorship programs. A proposal to create a national database of vetted mentorship hosts is gaining support. The goal is transparency. Survivors call it overdue. Advocacy groups are pushing for federal legislation modeled after labor protections. The proposed Talent Equity Act would mandate background checks, create whistleblower protections, and require all talent-based organizations to report retreat locations, schedules, and staffing rosters. Streaming platforms have begun scrubbing problematic credits. Music award shows are facing pressure to remove honorees under active investigation. One executive told press anonymously, "There's no PR strategy for this level of exposure. You either admit what happened or get exposed later." For survivors, justice is personal, but most agree closure isn't the goal. Disruption is. "We don't want apologies," one woman said. "We want this never to happen again." Some have turned to activism. Former dancers now host trauma recovery workshops. Ex-performers have become advocates, pushing for industry regulation and federal oversight. Others have left show business entirely. One woman whose testimony helped open the investigation now teaches self-defense to aspiring artists. "I'm not bitter," she said, "but I won't let the next generation walk into silence. Digital platforms once used to scout talent are also being repurposed. Encrypted forums now serve as survivor networks. Shared blacklists, legal resources, and wellness referrals are circulated quietly among insiders. Several whistleblowers are in protective relocation programs. At least 2 have left the country. 1 filed a civil suit against a former employer alleging retaliation. Another released a private memoir under a pseudonym. "They sold opportunity," she wrote. But what they delivered was silence packaged as privilege. The industry's future now hinges on whether it can meaningfully change its infrastructure. A well-known studio has suspended all external mentorships. A talent agency cut 11 employees following internal reviews. A legal firm is facing investigation for its role in drafting NDAs that deterred whistleblowing. The psychological toll remains high. Multiple survivors report PTSD, career detachment, and burnout. Mental health nonprofits have expanded services. Industry therapists are working pro bono. Support groups have formed under closed memberships. Yet amidst the fallout, a new ethos is taking root: informed consent transparency agency. Young artists are demanding contracts with safety clauses. Parents of teen performers are hiring private investigators to vet events. Brands are consulting survivor-led committees before signing endorsements. This isn't just a change in policy, it's a shift in power. Survivors are reclaiming narrative space. They're rewriting what it means to be protected in the industry. They are no longer waiting for someone to speak, they are the ones speaking. In a closing court memorandum filed May 2025, One survivor wrote, "I never signed up to be a witness, but when the door opened, I chose not to turn away. Because silence is how this began, and I refuse to let it end the same way." As the investigation enters its final phase, institutions face a question once asked only in whispers: what will they do when the silence breaks? This case was never just about Diddy. It's about a structure, a culture, and a choice to speak, to act, and to protect those coming next.